Hello and a very good morning to all. A warm welcome to our distinguished speakers and our participants from near and far. I hope you're hearing me fine. If you're not, there's a chat button at the bottom. Just hit that button and let me know if you can't hear me properly. All right. So once again, thank you all for signing up for our first ever virtual Gain Connex conference. If you have been one of our past participants, it's great to have you back. If this is the first time you're joining us, welcome on board. Right, so as some of you may know, Gain Connex is our annual platform where we hold this in 4 countries, namely Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. Right, and it's a knowledge sharing platform and a business matching platform for our companies to get insights into the local markets, and that we follow that typically with a series of business meetings with the local channel partners. Yeah. So late last year, as we were planning for what we want to do in 2020, we told ourselves that we've got to do this very differently. All right. So little did we know that we would be forced to do in this virtual format and in a totally different way that we expected. Right. But we adapt and hopefully we make this fruitful and productive for everyone. All right. So it's the first time we're doing this, and we're doing this virtually. So there's a couple of things we have to manage. So as you may know, we're running 2 tracks right now. So track 1 would be the conference itself, which is what's happening today. Track number 2 would be the one-to-one business meetings or business matchings that we're working with IDC together to arrange with the channel partners in the Philippines. And all this will be done virtually using digital tools that we have at our disposal today. Right. So unfortunately, due to the current situation worldwide, particularly in the countries that we're involved in, the logistics and the scheduling has been a bit challenging. So we hope that you can understand as we try to work out the kinks and the schedules amongst our companies here and also the partners in the Philippines. So nevertheless, as we work out the schedules together with the assistance of IDC, the team will be reaching out to you when we've got all these things lined up. All right. So before we kick off, some housekeeping. So first and foremost, we've placed everyone on mute except for the speakers. So this is to avoid crosstalk and background noise. We've also disabled the video for all the participants. So you won't be able to see everyone. So only the speakers would appear on screen. So later on, we will enable that, and I'll come to that later. So there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, so which is somewhere around here. So if you click on that, you can submit your questions. So feel free to submit your questions anytime. We'll monitor that and we will take that in our Q&A session towards the end. All right. And also we'll be having a group photo session before we leave. And so that's when we will enable everyone's cameras. And if you want to adjust your hair or put in something nice, do it now. And we'll take that group photo before we end our session today, okay? So this is our agenda. We have got Mr. Gopi Ganasalingam, Vice President of the Global Growth Acceleration Division in MDEC, to provide us the opening remarks and welcoming remarks and introduction. And then we've got Ms. Siti Azlina, Trade Commissioner of Martrade Philippines, for the welcoming remarks. And then for the keynote itself would be Mr. Sudev Banga, Managing Director of IDC ASEAN. His keynote is titled COVID-19, Navigating the Shifting ICT Landscape in the Philippines. All right, so, and then we'll have a Q&A session after that with all the speakers and panelists. And we'll invite IDC back again to give us a rundown on the channel partners they have shortlisted and also the arrangements that we will want to manage for the one-to-one business meetings, all right? So so there's also a chat button at the bottom. So if you want to just post any message to anyone, just click on that chat button and you can post messages. All right. So without further ado, I would like to invite Gopi for the introduction and opening remarks. Over to you, Gopi.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning from Kuala Lumpur, and welcome to the world of online. So at MDEC, we've always been emphasizing on digital economy, on the online business, but today we've had some tailwind pushing us into online. Most of us are not ready, but we are trying to get there. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us today on the very first market access initiative under the GAIN Connex program that MDEC runs under Global Growth. So thank you very much. But before I proceed, I want to just say my salutations to Matre for being so supportive. So Puan JJ, Farhana, and Nyai, thank you so much for being supportive and being on this online meeting. Also want to say thank you to Puan Siti Azlina, our Matre representative at the Philippines. Reps from MCCI, thank you so much for your support from the chambers. Mr. Edward Ling, President, and Mr. Eric Yam, Vice President. Thank you for your continued support, whether it's offline or online, you're always there. Thank you. Mr. Suresh Banga from IDC, a good friend of MDEC, a good friend of this program, was always made sure that the GAIN Connex continues to lead, continues to have outcomes. Just in the last 4 years, for your information, we had slightly less than 60 companies participating in our GAIN Connex, and in total, we have produced more than US $1 billion worth of contracts, and that is quite stunning. And we want to make sure that the momentum is still there. So, so we want to make sure that this online market access continues to grow your companies, to grow the market access between our neighboring countries. So this is a very, very crucial time for us. We have, as MDEC, as Global Growth, as GAIN, we have taken our funding online. We have got 2 initiatives that we have put in place for funding, and both have been oversubscribed, if I may use the term, in the sense that we've got VCs, that we've got about 80 VCs that we have put on a platform. We had 170 over companies applying to be funded, startups applying to be funded. And then we have also got the second initiative for the ECF initiative and the P2P. So all you entrepreneurs who have got money in your fixed deposits, you may want to consider it's a good time to invest via the ECF and P2P. Some of our startups are going to be looking at those avenues. We have got slightly more than 25 companies now looking at that platform as well. So yeah, it's a chance. I remember my ex-boss from American Express said, we used to have a lot of these sudden hiccups, but this is, COVID has been not a hiccup, but it's been a tremendous a wake-up call for a lot of us. And he would always tell us the difference, this is where we differentiate the boys and the men. Be a man. And he'll tell all of us, every time there's a problem, go and pivot the model, reconfigure, come back stronger. So with MDEC, we are trying to do that. We have taken all our programs online, and this is one of them. This will be a test because it's going to be borderless, it's going to be online. So I want to thank my team in Global Growth Acceleration GAIN, and to say that thank you so much for your effort in getting all our programs online. So I also want to say thank you to all the Malaysian companies. We have 24 companies today participating at this online GAIN Connex Philippines, and thank you so much, because business never stops, should never stop. We should continue going forward, and as MDEC, as GAIN, as Global Growth Acceleration, we will continue providing you the platform, at least online for now. I also want to say thanks to the Philippines counterpart, namely T1 Vision, for being here today. First Data Corp, MEC, Mustard Seed, MTech. Thank you very much. I really appreciate, or rather we appreciate you being online today to try and see how we could match demand and supply, both as bilateral trade. So thank you so much for that. And all the partners that we have invited by MCCI. So without further ado, I would like to say, I hope and I wish this will be a very prosperous online market access initiative. Time will tell. We will definitely learn. We will have some hiccups. This is the first time we are doing this online. Please give us your feedback, constructive feedback, and see how we could improve in future. Without further ado, I will pass it back to the MC of the day, Mr. Ryan Chan, who has spotted a new hairstyle under the MCO, and it looks really good. So over back to you, Ryan.
All right, thank you, Gopi. Thanks for the electrifying opening. So, yeah, so I thought since we feel like we're in prison, so might as well go for the full look lah. And I just want to point out, Hafiz is probably one of the youngest members we have in the team, but I just realized his taste in music is really, really old. So anyway, so thank you again, Gopi, for the opening speech. And right now, I'd like to pass the floor to Ms. Azlina for her welcoming remarks.
Hi, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. Magandang umaga po. Very good morning to all of you. First, let me acknowledge Mr. Gopi Ganesalingam, the Vice President of MDEC, Mr. Sudev, Managing Director of IDC ASEAN, and fellow MDEC companies in Malaysia and in the Philippines. Good morning once again, and thank you for having my trade for today's event. So I got a couple of points that I would like to share with all of you. First, on the digitalization. So as we are now working from home, so it is imperative that businesses level up their adoption of digital technology. So it makes sense that companies invest in operational digitalization to sustain businesses. So here in the Philippines, we have seen a lot of companies have started to go into e-commerce. In fact, people from the agriculture sector also in the quest to help the farmers to sell their agriculture produce. So for the past few days, I think the last couple of days, we have seen one big company, AgriNurture, a public listed company, has actually started B2B and B2C online stores. So we can see the trend moving forward from traditional stores to online stores, and these open up opportunities to companies in e-payment, mobile point of sales, retail solutions, supply chain, and inventory management. Secondly, on the Philippine national ID, for the past couple of weeks since the enhanced community quarantine has been imposed, there has been a lot of talk and debate for the government to revisit the idea of having Philippines national ID. This is because they find it's very hard to distribute the cash aid to the people because there is no single ID, and these may lead into redundancy of aid being given out. So I think yesterday the Undersecretary of National Economic Development Authority, or NEDA, Undersecretary Chua, has made a statement that the immediate project for NEDA in these few months would be two. First is to come up with post-COVID recovery plan, which he has yet to detail down what is it. And the second one is to expedite the national ID project. So we should be on the lookout once the government has tendered out the project for procurement of Philippine national ID. I believe Malaysia has the technical expertise, in this area to offer to the Philippine government. And thirdly, on the real estates, developers are still optimistic that the sector is resilient despite the delay in project execution because of the enhanced community quarantine. So for the past 6 weeks, construction sector has not yet operating, but they hope once the government lifted the first phase of this quarantine on April 30th, there will be a staggered or barangay-based quarantine, which will allow certain sectors like the construction and infrastructure to resume their operation. So developers also think that there will be a change in trend as people work more from home. They would require more square footage of their living area, and also the design of residential and offices must fit to the definition of social distancing, in which more or less, developers would anticipate usage of a lot of automation, digitalization in residential and also construction of offices. So I guess that's some insights that I wish to share with all of you. So please feel free to contact our office if you need any assistance, especially for facilitation with government authorities. Thank you once again, and back to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Azlina. Thanks for the enlightening insights into what are prospective trends in the Philippines and the areas that we can further explore together with Martrade. And I'd like to add that, Martrade has been a very good partner working with us. A lot of these things that we plan and execute would not have been possible without the support of the Martrade trade commissioners in all the countries that we go to. And of course, also the Martrade officers and the Martrade divisions based in Malaysia as well. So big shout out to Martrade for that. All right. So next we will move to Sudef, who will be presenting his keynote on COVID-19, navigating the shifting ICT landscape in the Philippines. All right. So Sudef, oh nice, you've got a jacket on. So.
Thank you very much. I decided to dress up today.
All right. Thanks for.
No problem. Let me get the slide going over here. Okay, brilliant. A very good morning to everyone. So my name is Sudif. I represent International Data Corporation, IDC. We're a market research organization. I lead out the ASEAN region. And on the call today as well, I do have a colleague. Her name is Suen. She's the consulting director for IDC across ASEAN, and she looks into the Philippines market as well. And what she will be doing will be sharing a bit in terms of the next steps when it comes to the business matching for the game Connex. Before I go on, a huge thank you to Gopi and Ryan and the team for having me here today as well. Truly appreciate it. Siti Azlina, thank you very much for that introduction. I think it's not very far from how we see the Philippines as well. And I think what is very critical for us to know over the next 20-30 minutes of what I'm going to present, everything is extremely new. And I think everything is extremely fresh to the point that even in IDC, when we are looking at our forecasts, we are starting to change a lot of our forecasts on a 15-day basis. Where once upon a time when we were changing our forecast, even when it comes to IT spending, it was on a quarterly basis. Now it's come to a point where we started to even look at things on a monthly basis. And as of last week, we started to look at things on a 15-day basis. So that's how dynamic the situation is. The one string that I can draw along the line from, whether it's from a global point of view, from the US to Europe, all the way to Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia, is the fact that spending in general is down. That's it. I think that is a given. That is something everybody knows, and everybody has started to tuck away their wallets and tuck away their money. And there's a lot of nervousness when it comes from an enterprise standpoint in reinvesting into something such as IT. But the cheeky part about this is that we've seen two spectrums of enterprises when the pandemic hit. The two spectrums were one side of the spectrum where enterprises were very ready. Their BCP kicked into place. They were able to then adapt and shift and transition to a virtual environment, while we saw organizations on the other end of the spectrum grappling, trying to figure out what they're supposed to do. Now, the face of the entire COVID-19, I have to say from a technology standpoint, is truly Zoom. I think virtual conferences have always been something of a scenario that has always been built up over the past couple of years. And with this scenario building up over the past couple of years, now it's actually time for a lot of tech companies to want to put, for a lot of enterprises who have underwent digital transformation, it's for them as well to be able to put money where their mouth is and start to utilize this virtual platform. So one thing is for certain, it was sudden, it was dramatic, it was something which was, I guess to a certain extent, when we look across the countries, and whether you want to call it MCO, whether you want to call it a circuit breaker, whether you want to call it enhanced community quarantine, whichever it is, economies have stopped almost from 100 kilometers per hour to zero, and it was almost overnight. And the trend we see right now is that if we look at a lot of organizations who wanted to undergo digital transformation, they have now taken a step back to actually see, maybe we should have sped up on our transition to digital transformation. Perhaps it would have been something more critical for us to look into had we foreseen something like a pandemic or a crisis. The problem with business as usual for a lot of organizations is that they've just plowed ahead as if everything is equilibrium. It's not going to change. It's going to be okay. And I used to joke, and unfortunately, perhaps the joke is not very, I guess to a certain extent, overly good taste. But I used to say for a lot of organizations to move into digital transformation, they can't be pinched, they have to be punched. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations at this point in time are being punched. So aside from the fact that they are trying to work remotely, they are trying to be, be able to equip their employees with a manner to work virtually from a virtual environment. It's quickly been seen that especially support services such as legal, procurement, administrative, these are services or business units which were very much unprepared for this. So you see contracts which still require ink signatures, for example, still be sent to offices, and people are grappling to understand, how do I actually get this out? How do I move this to an e-platform? How do we get governments to accept an e-signature, for example? So it was on both sides. The government transition as well as the enterprise transition basically is paving the way for what we call is the next normal. Hopefully, when things, if in a very optimistic point of view, things do recover, the pandemic slowdown will be towards June, and then things start picking up in the second half. But one thing is for certain, cutting across all countries and all regions, is that the long-lasting change in the industry is going to be felt, and the manner of which organizations look at risk is also going to change. So this is some of the stats that we've put out over time, as well as looking at some independent statistics which are out there in terms of the numbers of organizations that have transitioned across to work from home, the use of virtual platforms. As I said, Zoom has become the poster child of this because everyone just transitioned to Zoom. There was a huge uptake of more than 200% increase in downloads. And pre-COVID, if you had only a quarter, less than a quarter, in fact, you only have 1/6 of organizations looking at a virtual environment. Now, whether it's because of restrictions or because of government regulations, lockdowns, or whichever, you can see that almost 80% of organizations are now have transitioned to a work from home model. But this brought upon a couple of other challenges, and the other couple of challenges which we saw very quickly was security challenges. So a lot of organizations started trying to figure out what's the best way for them to secure their employees when they're working at home. How do is a VPN service required? How am I supposed to look at security as a whole for my organization while they're working outside? I mean, connectivity issues aside, which is one of the largest challenges for a country like the Philippines as well, for employees working outside. IDC's office, for example, we have 40 people out there sitting out in Bonifacio and in BGC. And when we had to close down within a day, all of a sudden we had to figure out how were we going to support all the remote workers who are going back to their hometowns or outside to the outskirts of Manila, who had very poor connectivity, who are utilizing nothing but their mobile data, for example, to connect to the internet. So these are very real challenges. And while those were challenges around connectivity, we did see these challenges around security infrastructure as well. And with very bored people sitting at home, perhaps like Ryan, rather than shaving his head, they start hacking. They start looking at things to do. They start trying to figure out, perhaps now this is the best way to breach into an organization or breach into an enterprise. And ergo, as a result of that, we saw an uptick in security infrastructure spending, looking towards new security solutions to protect the organization. And IT has been working overtime to ensure that is going on. So how is this, how has COVID affected the Philippines? I think Siti Azlina gave us a very good view in terms of what's happening over there. Obviously, the ECQ is meant to go on to 30th April, but as of literally 18 hours ago, we read that it's perhaps going to be extended. We also saw Singapore was extended to 1st June. I know us in Malaysia, we're all hoping that perhaps it's really going to be lifted next week. We're all crossing fingers and waiting for the next PM announcement, and we'll see what happens. But excuse me. But with the current infection rate in the Philippines, I think it's about 6,000, 6,500 right now, and with the number of testing still not at a level of which it should be, and yet the infection rate is increasing. Although the doubling of the infection rate is not as high, we still then foresee that there will be a large extension of this ECQ going ahead. And we do expect that at least even with the easing of the ECQ, we do expect a lot of businesses to take their time to transition back or to stagger back. A lot of the enterprises we have spoken to in the Philippines, they have decided to a certain point that they might stagger some workers back, they might stagger some employees that might have critical jobs to do or involved in critical projects that they need to execute. However, majority of them will still be functioning from home, and they will be working remotely in the midst of this ECQ. But obviously, with this said, then this impacts their economy in a big way. And I've seen a variation of a range of projections when it comes to the Philippines' GDP. There are those who still project growth, albeit a slow growth. There are accounts that sees the growth to actually be 1.1% lesser to a certain extent. There are those which have projected, and I have a slide there are those who have projected a negative growth. But Carlos Dominguez, the Secretary of Finance, he has come out to say that his expectation at this point in time is going to be 0% growth or even 0.1.
Right. Sorry, you're breaking up slightly.
Yes, am I breaking up?
Yeah.
Okay.
You were breaking up just on this slide. Yeah. Maybe you
Are you all right now?
Now it's all right. So maybe you might need to repeat the last 30 seconds.
Last 30 seconds. Okay, I need to remember what my last 30 seconds were. But I'm guessing it's on this slide.
Yes, it is.
But yeah. Okay. So what I was talking about was the GDP. I guess the GDP growth projections. And then at this point, we're seeing a differing amount of range coming up from different analysts and economists at this point. And well, Carlos Dominguez, again, I was citing him, the Secretary of Finance, he was talking about perhaps looking at a GDP being absolutely 0% growth or even a minus 0.1% to 0.5%. There are economists who are projecting a negative 1 to 2% growth of GDP as well. So I think this is also something of a projection that has shifted again very frequently over the past 2 weeks. We're seeing projections from economists and analysts change very quickly. Once again, we're in one of those times where if you look at even our ICT predictions from IDC, as I said, the stability around that has forced us to start to look at our projections on a 15-day basis. So the data that you're going to see from us, we look at it at the start, in text to say that it is updated as of mid-April. So that's our projections. But by the end of April or the first week of May, we should have different projections as well in terms of how the ICT spending or IT spending is going to look. So with that in mind and thinking about the economic projections, how I've structured this presentation is to also show you how globally enterprises are reacting to this. And I think it's very important for us to see how the trend in worldwide as well as US, that in essence for us is very, very similar to how Southeast Asia or Asia Pacific has been reacting to the spending around ICT, especially when it comes to the sectors. I think the sectors in general, when you look at them, the impact towards the sectors are fairly similar across the board, across the globe. There's no uniqueness in this. I think the difference here has been that if you want, a lot of people have tried to compare this out to SARS. The difference around that was that the globe was less connected at that point in time. There was not the way supply chains function and the way a lot of was very much insular. And now with the dependency on a global supply chain, we see obviously manufacturing to be impacted. Yes,
there again.
Can you hear?
Yeah, maybe it might need to sit closer to the mic. Just lost you there in the last, just when you're talking about manufacturing, I think.
Okay, do you mind? Let me just check something really quickly. Then this is the beauty of, it could be, let me just check this. I got an alert that I've low system resources. I apologize about that.
No problem.
It could be I have a backup ongoing in the background, which I need to stop. This is the brilliance. So part of working from home is the fact that a lot of organizations are very sensitive towards backing up your system. So the backups, like in IDC, it occurs on a frequent basis to the point that so I apologize about that.
Okay, it's just you're fading in and out.
Okay, very good. 1 second, please. Okay. Do you mind if I just unshare for a minute? And Ryan, I will continue in 1 second. I just need to shut down some services and I'll be back.
Okay, sure.
I apologize for that.
In the meantime, we'll just listen to Hafiz's radio again. Yeah, so to all our participants, again, we've got a Q&A panel. So if you've got any questions that you want to direct to any of the panelists or the speakers, you can submit your questions through there as well. And we're going to be having a Q&A session towards the end, all right?
Come to me wild and wild. You come to me, give me everything I need. Give me a lifetime of promises and a world of dreams. Speak the language of love like you know what it means. And it can't be wrong. Take my heart and make it strong. You're simply the best. Better than all the rest. Better than anyone. Anyone I've ever met. I'm stuck on your heart. I hang on every word you say. Tear us apart. Baby, I would rather be dead. In your heart since the start of every night and every day. In your eyes, I get lost, I get washed away. Just as long as I'm here in your arms, I could be in no better place. You're simply the best. Better than all the rest. Better than anyone. Anyone I ever met. Ooh, I'm stuck on your heart. I hang on every word you say.
Well, hello again. And once again, I apologize for that. Okay. Ryan, is everything okay now? Can you hear me?
Yep, looks good so far.
Okay, I'm hoping this is going to sustain.
We've got our fingers crossed.
Services. So once again, I apologize for that. But going straight back in the interest of time, we were talking about some sectors and the impact of COVID on these sectors. So once again, from a worldwide perspective, we saw manufacturing to be the hardest hit, especially around their supply chain. If we localize this down into a Southeast Asian view as well, and also to the Philippines, obviously supply chains were very hard hit very early on, and there were a lot of questions over the whether that ecosystem or that supply chain could actually continue. Obviously, there was a lot of effort put in by the government to want to try to enhance those supply chains or keep those supply chains running. But I think at this point in time, with extended whether it's ECQs or MCOs or CBs, we're starting to see those things crack, because when demand, especially from consumers, start to outdo what manufacturers are able to provide through a supply chain, that's when we see the cracks. However, as I was alluding to in my earlier part, was saying that ergo, therein lies the opportunity for technology. We're seeing manufacturers starting to try to see how much they can automate simply because of the restrictions they have on the shop floor, the restrictions they have on the supply line in the factory, and therefore they're starting to look towards whether analytics or some form of automation or AI is going to actually be able to help them through these times, because they see this for a bit of an extended future. Government is something of which I won't cover much, because they are the most so-called recession resistant. But these are the government in essence, they're taking a lot of their budgets to try to want to spend on stimulus packages and trying to re-stimulate the economy, and you can't blame them for that. In the Philippines specifically, I think there's a total amount of 23 billion US dollars which have been announced by Carlos Dominguez, and they were saying that this is to take them through to the end of May, which also hints at the point that perhaps the ECQ will go on till the end of May, or whether it's just been announced during while we're talking to each other right now. It could perhaps be the decision, and they do have headroom to play, and they feel that this is something they are able to weather economically at this point in time till the end of May to mid-year. Other very heavily impacted industries, obviously hospitality, tourism, aviation, those were very heavily impacted. The tourism aviation industry in the Philippines was very heavily impacted. The aviation industry alone was looking, in totality, tourism aviation, I think they're looking at about a huge amount. I mean, their contribution is about 10 billion US dollars to the GDP. And the unfortunate scenario now with such a drop in the amount of flights and tourism, and typically now is getting to the warmer days in the Philippines, and everybody will be headed out to the islands. And you can imagine that domestic travel will also be very high. International travel will be high to go enjoy the so-called summer weather in the Philippines. And unfortunately, this time around, it won't be happening. So this is also a grave impact. And we can see that right now, when it comes to technology spending or focus on technology, these organizations are a little bit handcuffed in terms of what they can do because of their day-to-day business being taken away. And therefore, what measure or what manner of IT spending is going to be very difficult for them to actually want to I guess, actualize at this juncture. So if we look at worldwide forecasts, you can see the percentages out here. I'm just going to move my grid a little bit so I can help you look at the percentages. March forecast, what we have was a minus 1.7% in terms of 2019 2020 global GDP rate. And in essence, for IDC, we have seen the trend over the past 20, 30, 40 years when it comes to IT spending being growth being very close towards GDP growth as well. So IT spending from our projections at this point in time worldwide is a minus 2.7%. And you can see in that chart on the left-hand corner, you can see devices and essentially hardware and services is probably going to get the largest hit. So devices, when it comes to laptops, phones, mobile phones, servers, we expect that that hardware not to be moving because there's already a back order of this stock which has not been fulfilled, and therefore this is something that will not push through until the supply chains get back normal. So we do anticipate a slowdown in that spending, or in fact a contraction of that spending when it comes to devices and hardware overall. Software as well as infrastructure, and when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about cloud services and data center services. Now therein for us lies the opportunity. Cloud services, in fact, for us, we see that environment moving straight into 2021, and even very relevant to the Philippines, a multi-cloud environment should be sprouting by 2021. We do anticipate for a lot of organizations, for the sake of business continuity, for the sake of their organization being able to weather these type of crises in the future, they will be looking at cloud-based services, not just for services that might be SaaS or PaaS related to build upon. However, it is going to be a services to also relate towards functioning business units that are very, very important for them to continue their business process functions. So for example, again, legal, procurement, they're going to start looking more into applications which are going to support them. Finance, for example, they're going to look into applications to support them. Our surveys came back and it was very interesting. We look across Southeast Asia and even Philippines organizations. We found that a lot of finance is still kept in-house. And a lot of finance is still kept within documents or very, very paper type filing systems. And because of that, it was very difficult for them, even if you were to go to them and offer them a free cloud application right now to port their finance, they will not be able to do it so quickly, and that migration process is going to take time. But again, going back to the little bit of the statement I made at the start, maybe you can't be pinched, you have to be punched. I guess, unfortunately, the pain which is reverberating across enterprises when it comes to ensuring these support functions are continuing has started to creep in. Ergo, for them to pay attention to these services. IT services, you might be looking here and wondering why is contracting, is because a lot of IT services, even by our count, is system integration or integration that requires individuals to be on site. So with a lot of projects on hold and with a lot of organizations, enterprises closed, all these projects are starting to be deferred, and therefore we are seeing a contraction in IT services. So we do expect delays to purchases and projects, extremely cautious approach to budget contingency planning. I think a lot of them are starting to look at their budgets, and now so-called capital budgets around not digital transformation so much, but security spending, as well as contingency spending that they require in times of crises. We're starting to hear these discussions actually crop up. So with that said, this is a bit of the sentiment of our technology index. I have 2 slides on this, then I'll go US and then to Philippines. Then we'll wrap up and take Q&A. Buyer intent continues to trend downwards. Now you can see how fast, and again, we started doing this on a 15-day basis from a global scale, and we started to do that very much from an IT spending scale. We did this on sentiment, and now we have translated this to spending. And you can see how buyer intent and market indicators have been trending downwards. Market, so on our scale of 1,000 indicates a growth, and below 1,000 and above indicates a growth. Below 1,000 indicates a decline in IT spending. The buyer intent being higher at this point was driven very much by the US audience, the US enterprises at that point in time, which was a little bit delayed, in the 1 month delayed in terms of reacting to COVID. So for them, they felt business was running as usual before it started impacting them in a big way. And I think we saw this transition across the globe and Southeast Asia, even in Southeast Asia alone. If you look at how that has been placed out, in January, Singapore was reacting, Malaysia was somewhat reacting, Philippines and Indonesia was sitting back and going, oh, we don't have any cases. And all of a sudden, boom, they faced it. Philippines acknowledged that a lot faster, and ergo in mid-March, they decided to shut everything down, which was seen as very drastic at that point in time, but they were one of the first, if not the first Southeast Asian country to actually close down the country to make sure they tried to stamp this out, because it gave, for the president, it gave him time to want to react to this situation. So buyer intent in the US was somewhat delayed, but you can see Asia Pacific trend. In my next slide, you can see Asia Pacific trend sort of come up a little bit around March, early March. And a lot of this was driven somewhat by China, who started to also start to reopen up. But also we saw a lot of ad hoc spending. A lot of enterprises now are starting to look towards ad hoc spending of an environment where they can create in a virtual means. So how do I look at infrastructure to support my virtual environment? How do I look at infrastructure to be able to support my employees outside? Which video conferencing tools should I license? How do I actually be able to utilize different webinar tools, for example? So we are seeing this ad hoc spending creep in. Asia Pacific, we're seeing a little bit of that curve, slight little bump on the curve somewhere in March, but it's still trending downwards in April. And we expect this to trend a little bit more, especially since it's isolated countries only opening up slightly. Japan is in a little bit of trouble as well still at this point, and it's still uncertain in terms of how they are going to react. So European enterprises are most pessimistic at this point in time. Asia Pacific, certain countries, certain enterprises are pessimistic. The Philippines at this point in time is pessimistic. That is the sentiment we get on the ground right now. And while they are trying to operate, they are trying to be business as usual, and there are spots of organizations or enterprises in the Philippines that is trying to operate as much as possible business as usual. The vast majority of those we have spoken to have said that they are waiting for normalization before getting back into full gear. We're waiting for things to get back to normal. So they're trying to react. They are a little bit handcuffed for various reasons, whether it's from an infrastructure standpoint, connectivity, or whether it's from an overall business, which was very dependent on face-to-face customer interactions. They are finding it slightly difficult at this point to function. Or even for manufacturers or ecosystem supply chain, we are seeing a little bit of a bump in the road at this point in time. So sentiment in terms of spending sentiment, the purchasing index. So this is a little bit of a US stat. And again, I will get to the Philippines stat, but I think why it's important to look at worldwide and US is because we have seen these sentiments very similar across the globe. Again, cutting across the idea that it's borderless, the pandemic is borderless, and the reaction to the pandemic is just at differing speeds trending towards the same result. Cutting across all hardware, you can stare at this, all hardware, whether PC tablets, printers, monitors, smartphones, servers, we're seeing a total drop in IT spending across the board here. Again, IT services, because of the need to be on site for integration, we're seeing a drop there. So this is a trend that we foresee is going to continue over the next 6 months towards the next 6 to 9 months in Southeast Asia as well as the Philippines. sentiment purchasing index when it comes to new technology. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and this is the opportunity for you. Now, if organizations are playing into what is called more of a third platform, or what we define as innovation accelerators for end users and for verticals or sectors to help enhance them at this moment in time, you are it. You are a very critical component to them at this point in time. You are able to support them at this juncture to whether it's to save on cost or to be able to fulfill something with them, having to not pivot so much from what their business actually is, and to pivot so much in terms of how they want to operate. You are actually it. You will be an organization they would truly want to speak to at this moment in time. So cloud, robotics, security, blockchain, and 5G mobile, we are expecting that to continue on. You can see the uptick in AI. AI simply because, again, a lot of that automation, a lot of that RPA, a lot of the need for manufacturers to want to move into areas of self-maintenance, predictive maintenance, self-healing. A lot of effort is being put into that. Can I analyze and understand what is happening? Can this be fixed automatically via a form of AI? We're seeing that sentiment on the ground at this juncture in US and global. And it's without a doubt, although at a differing level in the Philippines as well, we are seeing end users and manufacturers start to consider something such as this. This is just a more elaboration again around the top priority in terms of spending. But typical ones, cloud security, you can see up there, workforce employee is there, database analytics is there. But I think the bottom rung, anything from virtual workspace all the way down to remote access learning, video conferencing, enterprise social, we are seeing that a lot of ad hoc spending is occurring there. So IT budgets, which were otherwise planned for the year, are now starting to be reallocated very quickly to say, use that chunk and put it over there to make sure that if this pandemic continues and we are locked down for the next 6 months, our organization, our enterprise is able to function in any shape or form to support our customers and still be there for them. All right. So why it was important for us to look at worldwide as well as the US stat is because ultimately, when you look at the Philippines, the dependency on the outside, whether it's export-import statistics, and you look at their top export partner being the US, and you look at the rest of the countries of China, Japan, and Korea, the dependency on a lot of the dependency on these countries were the hardest hit countries, or are the hardest hit countries at this point in time. Therefore, for the Philippines, this has become something difficult to weather, although as much as possible, you're trying to continue business. But with all these countries, with their supply chains hit, with a lot of import exports restrictions coming in at this point, it's become a little bit more difficult for them to function. So you can see export statistics and import statistics. Why it's important for us to look at it from a global perspective, US as well as Asia Pacific, is because all this influences the thinking of the end users that you want to speak to in the Philippines today. They are thinking immediately at this point in time is saying, where can I make my next dollar? And the last thing they're thinking about now is saying that, how do I actually spend on IT? Now, the difference there and what's in the middle is coming up with an idea to say, how do I spend on IT to be able to get that dollar? Now, that is still a discussion that is worth having. And that's a discussion we feel that you should be having with Philippines enterprises today. So with these projections, you're again going to the Philippines specifically, and I told you there's a whole swath and a whole range of forecasts when it comes to GDP growth and out.
Oops, Sudef? Sudef? Looks like we lost him again. So just give us a minute while we try to get in touch with Sudef. Oh, Sudef, you're back on?
Again, I apologize. I will get back to where I am. Okay, there you go. My feedback will definitely be sent to Zoom very soon after this. Okay, very good. You can hear me, Ryan, just checking.
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. I'm almost at the end, so I'm hoping that this won't happen anymore. So again, going to the impact of the economy and the range of what we see when it comes to the GDP growth percentages, we're looking at best case, worst case, and the best case is a minus 5.4 billion hit to the GDP, and the worst case is almost a 50 billion US dollar hit to the GDP. As mentioned earlier at the start, and this is why it was important to reference the global statistic, is that manufacturing, retail, tourism, the typical ones which are impacted even on a global basis and even from a US and Asia Pacific basis, these are the ones which are impacted very greatly as well in the Philippines. So if we look across to the IT spending figure, give me 1 second. Yes, there we go. Slide was having trouble changing. Total IT spending. Now, what I've shown you here is the pre-COVID forecast for the Philippines. And this is purely enterprise spending. If you want to add consumer, it goes up closer to 9 billion. If you want to add the C, which is communications, which is fixed line, mobile network, mobile data, fixed data, that's going to go up to almost 20 billion US dollars. But I took out enterprise IT spending on its own at this point in time. Now, pre-COVID, we're looking at 4.8 billion US dollars in total spending in the Philippines. But right now, we're looking at a minus 8% for the Philippines 2019 to 2020. And this is now looking expected to achieve about 4 billion US dollars by the end of 2020. And hardware, services, overall IT spending trend is downwards, but we do expect applications and software to have a bit of a positive growth, seeing that a lot of organizations are going to start looking into licenses or applications which are going to help their virtual environment. So again, cutting across the Philippines IT spending impact, it is going to be huge. If we reference this across to Southeast Asia, sans Singapore, in terms of the impact, we are also going to see about -5, -6% in totality when it comes to an ASEAN IT spending growth year on year, 2019 to 2020. Now, if you look towards the projections, now these, again, the stats you see up there are pre-COVID. However, we do not anticipate this to overly impact 2021 to 2023. We think there will be a recovery because ultimately organizations that post-COVID, organizations that have delayed digital transformation projects, we anticipate, and the sentiment we get on the ground is that because they do not want to be put in this position again, they are going to accelerate their digital transformation process. They're going to accelerate that spending. So we do hope and we do anticipate that is going to come back, especially by early 2021. And the two areas of focus for the Philippines in terms of their ICT maturity is going to be what we call future of work as well as future of operations. Now, the future of work, it encapsulates both the physical and virtual environment. It talks about creating an innovative culture, albeit being in a virtual environment or a virtual office, and how the collaboration model can work within an organization. Philippines organizations are trending that way. You can see a huge amount, 70 to 75% of them sit between opportunistic or repeatable. So they aspire to be a virtual environment. And a lot of this is driven because number one is proximity, where majority of the employees sit out in relation to where the office is. They want to be able to interact or have the employees interact with the organization without always forcing them to travel 2 hours by traffic, on the road, by car, in traffic to the organization. So the future of work, a lot of that has a lot of emphasis around that has been placed at this point in time. The next area of interest is future of operations. So you can see again about 65 to 70% of them are sitting within opportunistic and repeatable. Future of operations encapsulates the infrastructure operations and the modernization of the operations of an organization. The sentiment we get on the ground in the Philippines is that enterprises now and post-COVID and even slightly before, they do want to pay attention to their operations. They want to make sure they are set up and they are able to run this well should another crisis hit. They do want to be prepared. So now, because everyone has been caught off guard, they feel that operationally, this is something that they do want to get into. So discussions around cloud, discussions around data center, discussions around actual hardware infrastructure within your organization that needs to be modernized. These are areas of discussions they are having right now around the future of operations. So in closing, and I guess just a couple more slides, your opportunity assessment, if you look at it, is from 2 points of view. One is a little bit ad hoc and short term. The short term and ad hoc way is to look into how you can help organizations and end users in the Philippines to access to that extra dollar, to continue to access to that dollar. So alluding to what I mentioned earlier in the presentation just now, if you are able to then come up with or provide a solution, a technology, which is going to help an organization to get that dollar, they want to speak to you. If you're speaking to them to say, I have this technology, please spend on this, it's going to be very difficult for them to articulate that in this moment in time. So end users are looking for solutions. They're looking for a partner to help them in this time. Now, the sales cycle will be slightly longer. However, especially if it's going to be a longer drawn deal when it comes to bundling a lot of different services. Now, the ad hoc budget allocation that we found, a very quick budget reallocation, is for quick and dirty technology or solutions they can actually get at this moment in time. Collaborative tools, cloud-based applications, this is where we as analytics AI, this is where we see the opportunity in the Philippines on a short-term basis. On the longer-term basis, we are looking at you being able to encapsulate much wider applications and solutions and technologies that provide as a holistic solution that covers the whole spectrum of what you see below there. So big data, IoT, AI, robotics, blockchain, 5G, provided via platforms of cloud, for example, in a secure environment, application delivery. These are areas where we think is going to be in the longer term. Now, you may not play into all of that at this moment in time. However, this represents areas of what we see in the next 6 months, particularly around software and the type of related services, software applications. We are going to see a little bit of an uptick of interest in the Philippines organizations right now. Hardware, unfortunately, very simply put, that is not the area of spend, and that is going to probably expect the largest decline at this moment in time in the Philippines. So the last bit of advice for the organizations which have dialed in. Internally, I think a lot of what we are seeing at this point in time, again, is around dealing with remote workers in the short term. Again, this is a very changing landscape. The Philippines organizations we have spoken to at this point in time are saying that we just want to make sure that we can get scale up when it comes to operations. We just want to make sure people are back at work. They have some sectors have acknowledged job losses. I think that is inevitable, and that is something which will occur across all economies, and the Philippines is no different from that. However, for organizations who are able to function remotely, that is their priority at this point in time. Investments into being able to create a virtual organization. So, but on the flip side, the way you can win confidence with a lot of these organizations that we felt, and the sentiment we get on the ground, is that they want to see how you are reacting to it as well. And this is how we can cite a lot of vendors or even end users in terms of how their operations change in the face of COVID to look at how they are reacting. And I will tie this a little bit to the Edelman stat that 65% of respondents state that how well a brand responds to the crisis will have a huge impact on the likelihood to buy that brand in the future. I think that is a very good statistic that we are seeing on the ground as well, because end user organizations are now saying, we will feel confident with a partner who reacted to this well, who was stable throughout, who innovated on their product or solution to be able to fit into the current times to say, this is how I can provide this solution to you in these times to help you achieve what you need to achieve. They will be more confident to work with you in the longer term. So the sentiment on the ground we find is very synonymous with the statistic we saw from Edelman, and I thought it was very good for us to put it up there. And at the same time for you, if you're looking to get into and work with some of the end users, this is where the partnership ecosystem is going to be critical. Somebody on the ground of which resonates with with how you think and how you derive your solutions to benefit the end users. That thinking has to be very synonymous in terms of the message or the mentality that's provided to the end user. We think that's a winning formula at this point in time in the Philippines, based on a lot of the sentiment that we have gathered from the end users that we have talked to. Okay, so with that, thank you very much. Once again, I wholly apologize for a couple of bumps in the road while presenting, but other than that, back to you, Ryan. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sudef. No worries. I think we're all adjusting to video conferencing and how technology is not yet perfect. But thank you again for the presentation. So we'd like to move to the Q&A now. So if I can invite our other speakers to switch on their cameras and join us for the Q&A. So I'm aware that we've passed the hour and 10-minute mark. So in the interest of time, we'll try to take maybe 2 or 3 questions before we end the session today. All right. So far, we've got 2 questions from the Q&A. So let's start with that first, right? So the first question is from KC. He's asking, well, he's saying that he's looking to start selling aggressively in the Philippines through his office there. But looking at the situation, he's wondering if he should postpone this initiative to next year. So maybe that's, I suppose that's something maybe Azlina can advise, or maybe even Sudef.
Please, Azlina.
Right. Thanks, Casey, for the questions. I think a company should always in the lookout, for opportunities. What more during the pandemic? Which areas they can offer? If you think your solution fits well and can help banks, to use your solution during the pandemic, because now they operate less hours with limited branches, and more than often they ask their clients to go to do online banking. So if you think that your solution would benefit the banks, yeah, go ahead. Why wait? Thank you.
Could I add in as well, if you don't mind?
Sure. Yeah.
So this whole pandemic situation and the MCO in most countries has brought about problem statements everywhere in the industry. And I think for entrepreneurs to be able to identify the problem and give a solution augurs very well for entrepreneurship. And we are seeing a lot of companies that are now identifying new problem statements, pivoting their model, and offering solutions. So I would encourage all entrepreneurs to not to say we don't want to go into any market or any opportunity, but to really look at the new problem statements that are coming up and how one can fit as a solution. Thank you.
Thanks, Gopi. So I think that's
sorry, I just add really quickly one sentence. I just think that no matter what the position at this point in time, our advice to a lot of vendors or partners out there is to make sure that they still stay within that market as much as possible, have that presence, whether it's just engaging with them, whether it's saying hi, whether it's just keeping them warm or creating LOIs at this point in time so that you can ramp up. One thing that I really wanted to say just now in my presentation was the fact that when this is over, you're going to get every single Jack, Joe, and John calling the end users, every single Jack, Joe, and John. And the thing that is going to help you at this point in time is that if you can create that mind share at this moment and continue to plow that, you automatically will be top of mind. Even though Jack, Joe, and John calls, Sam is going to be top of mind. So I would suggest that for Casey.
Yeah, thanks. So I think engagement is key, right? And getting that mind share and staying there.
Correct.
So, just now both yourself and Azlina, you touched on digital transformation initiatives in the Philippines, right? So just wondering, if you would be able to break it down into specific projects that you think enterprises and businesses would prioritize when it comes to digital transformation moving forward in the next 6 to 12 months.
Sure. Should I start on that? So digital transformation projects, going back to the idea that a lot of organizations will be reviewing their operations, especially in terms of how they're able to function. So BCP is top of their mind now. Again, 73 to 80% of organizations at this juncture, even in the Philippines, say they do not want this to happen again. They do not want this to repeat where their organization is unable to function in view of a pandemic or a crisis. So for us, we see that majority of them will be looking at their infrastructure, will be understanding in terms of building a hybrid environment, moving more into a multi-cloud environment by 2021. They will be looking more into collaborative applications. They will be building on platforms, and analytics areas will be one key area of growth we see for next year, or towards the end of next year, this year and next year, where organizations are going to look at analytics and AI to better enable and automate their organizations.
So can I add in here? Just to add in, so I have got feedback coming back from entrepreneurs, and I like some of them in what they're telling me, and I ask them, what are your next steps after post MCO? And these entrepreneurs are saying, look, quite a few of them have said that every day I'm doing video calls to my customers, understanding their problems, understanding what is their problem, and trying to work things out. And I'm doing it at pro bono because I am building goodwill. I also have another batch of entrepreneurs who are going to the SME. SMEs are the ones that are most greatly affected. And talking with the SMEs and understanding what the problem is, trying to cut a solution to save the SMEs. And so a lot of these entrepreneurs are spending a lot of time talking to their clients worldwide, anywhere in the world, because it's now on video, it's online, and understanding the problems and trying to build goodwill. So I was pleasantly surprised at the approach people are taking.
Azlina, would you like to share your views on this?
Yeah, I think at the moment, for companies, yeah, they are looking more into onboarding e-commerce. So I guess this is one of the main priority areas. I think from the very beginning of the enhanced community quarantine, the ride-hailing company like Angkas, within 1 week they transformed to become delivery. So they partner with restaurants and do food delivery instead. So I think it's timely for businesses to go back to business, but by onboarding into e-commerce and online platforms. Yeah.
Thanks. So it's about adaptability as well. Yeah. All right, responding quickly to the situation. So just now, going back to what Sudev presented and how IDC is monitoring, changing from a 30-day monitoring to a 15-day monitoring of IT spend. So I'm just wondering, as a business owner, what would be the kind of leading indicators or economic indicators or even data points that a business owner should look at to determine what kind of recovery we're looking at? Is it going to be a short, a V-shaped kind of recovery, a U or L or whatever shape it is? How long is going to be? Do you any of the three speakers here, do you have any opinions of what kind of indicators a business would want to look at for that? Maybe we can start with Azlina.
Well, I guess now it's all about business sustainability. So, like it or not, business has to onboard into digital platforms. And in that quest, they have to make sure that their employees are being supported, in terms of infrastructure, telecommunication, things like that. So it's big and challenging because most of the workers are located in the subdivision, sub-areas where internet connection is not stable. So I think the immediate measures by the businesses is to make sure that they are able to get back into business by providing the necessary and essential tools and internet infrastructure to their people.
Gopi, do you have any opinion on this?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a time that every businessman or every business is pivoting. Even an online business is pivoting because consumer behavior has just changed overnight. The same customer you were addressing has changed. his behavior, his pattern, his purchase, his hunger, his wants have all changed. So everyone, including those who are on tailwind, e-commerce or fintech or going into cashless, everyone's changing because consumer behavior has changed. The wants have changed. The desires have changed. So I would say let's not take it lightly. I think all of us have to relook at our business model, including MDAC, and we are also evaluating our business model for the industry.
Yep. Thanks. Sudhaf, any views from IDC?
Sure. I think leading lagging indicators is very difficult to want to think about at this moment in time. I think every consultant has come out, whether economist or consultant, has come out with every possible scenario at this point in time. And there's not a single consultant that has come out with or analyst that has come out with a frame to say this is the only scenario. Everyone has at least 3 scenarios that you're looking at, whether it's a best, worst, probable. In our case, again, it was the normal, new normal, and the next normal. That's what we call it. So I think it's very difficult. And again, I would just say that the only caution I would throw out is that we tend to consume a lot of these statistics. I would say that whatever statistics you consume, the way you react to it would actually be with an air of caution to say that this might change tomorrow. And when it changes, it most often than not at this moment is not going to be for the better. The most you can hope for at this point in time is stability, not growth. So you have to always keep that at the back of your mind, and then create allowances or headroom for the contingency of it actually going even more negative. Without wanting to sound pessimistic, but I think that would be the more cautious approach to things.
You're a cheerful guest to have in the morning.
I know, thank you.
Change your name to Dr. Doom. While I have you here, I've got a question that's actually directed to you from Ken. So if I understand this question correctly, so he's talking about healthcare being in a favorable position based on IDC's assessment. So I think what he's asking is that would you think would there be more opportunities in the future for devices that don't require no touch devices, probably maybe voice activated, gesture activated devices, for registration, so on and so forth, and even devices for monitoring of patients and people?
Yep. Actually, articulating the question now, that makes a lot of sense in the manner that I think that opportunity is going to be very big. It's going to be, the pandemic has caused even how hospitals react to patients to be very different, right? The caution is there, and more so we expect this to continue going forward to the juncture that it is now we have to protect our health workers more so than the health workers going there and saying, I've seen it all. What could you possibly have that I'm not going to be infected by? So again, contactless registration or applications which are going to help in terms of assigning medical workers or wheelchairs or beds or linen or whichever that's going to matter for the patient coming in and out. I do see that as an opportunity. In fact, we see in Malaysia, for example, we're seeing private hospitals start to ramp up a lot of that as well. Certain private hospitals in Indonesia and definitely in the Philippines have started to look towards that. And we think that is going to be an upward trend. So if he's in the business, I would say stay there, stay relevant, stay loud. And I think peel out for 6 months down the road.
All right, thanks for that. So Ken, I hope that answers your question. So maybe just before we wrap up, there's another question that just came in. Any idea on the statistics or percentage of companies in the Philippines that are embarking on retrenchments? I guess Martrade would be best placed to answer that. I don't know.
I'm not pretty sure whether Department of Labour has issued national statistics. But because of now, when the government mandated, enhanced community quarantine, they have made sure they have actually cautioned the employer not to do retrenchment as much as possible. And Department of Labour has been trying to work with the big employers, how to manage their people in terms of salary, things like that. But we can check if there is official statistic. We can check with the Department of Labor.
Thanks. So I think that would.
Sorry, just to say, I think that's a very difficult stat as well because it's a rolling stat. So what we have found estimates is about when the shutdown first happened in the Philippines, the ECQ, they were anticipating 400,000, but that can actually change really quickly. Globally, the estimates right now is about 25 million potential job losses. So it's a constantly rolling statistic as more and more business find it harder to sustain. I think also we need to see, especially for the Philippines, it's going to be important to see after May, because right now, as they say, economically, they're able to sustain till the end of May. I think the critical point where we need to look for is going to be end of May. And that's when you're going to see the industries reacting.
Yeah, so I was going to say that's probably a lagging indicator that we'll get the data on probably 2 months from now. Yep. Yeah, thanks. So, okay, so that's a final question then from Daytree to Sudev. He's asking, how is Philippines cope with work from home? Do they have the kind of connectivity or infrastructure that we have, in Malaysia compared to Malaysia?
I like that question because, okay, I'm going to stay positive in this because the fact that we actually compared Philippines to Malaysia, that Malaysia has better infrastructure or good internet infrastructure makes me happy. So the Philippines, and I'll just reference this from a personal point of view, even for IDC as an organization, that when we had to shut down in Metro, and again, a lot of our employees had to go out. The largest challenge we had across 90% of them was connectivity. So over days, we had employees coming back to us saying they needed to access the office, they needed to get in. And going to what Aslina's point was just now, the criticality of having an employment card and a national identity card became very crucial at that point because they were filtering people in and out of Metro. They wanted to restrict, right, the movement of people coming in and out of Metro. So we found that ultimately a lot of them were hinging off their mobile data. And we found that a lot of organizations we have spoken to, and in fact, some of the partners as well we have spoken to, which we wanted for this, one of the main reasons why it's been difficult for them to want to attend this webinar has been because of connectivity. The area they're in is just not stable. They're running on very, very low Mbps and they are unable to sustain presentations such as this. So it is a little bit difficult at this point.
Okay. So perhaps I can also invite Aslina to weigh in on this topic, given that you're there yourself.
Yeah, I think it's a fact that everybody know, as compared to Malaysia, Philippines is not there yet in terms of connectivity. But I think the government is trying hard to improve their infrastructure connectivity, especially under the president of Duterte. So we do hope, once more private investment coming in, this can improve work from home. So, at the end of the day, COVID actually opened up everybody's eyes that where are the areas that they need to improve in future. So I believe the government has seen the importance for businesses to allow the employee to work from home, and as such, government must ensure connectivity which will support employees working from home.
All right, thank you. So that will be the last question that we take. So before we move on to the next segment, Gopi, do you have any final thoughts or comments you want to make?
No, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone, all of us here, to come together online as a market access opportunity. Philippines is our trial, and we will learn from this and how we then move to other markets. So thank you so much, and really appreciate all the feedback from IDC, from Margaret. Thank you for being so candid with the feedback. And to the companies that are listening in, let's make this work and let us know how else we can help you with from an MDEC lens. Yeah. Thank you so much, Brian and team, for bringing this together. I think we have a photo session now, right?
Yeah, so just before we move on there, we've got a short briefing from IDC about the partners and so on. So thank you to all the speakers a virtual round of applause. I hope you can hear this. So before we end, can I pass the floor to Sue Ann of IDC? So she's going to just run us through very briefly, maybe a 5-minute brief on the partners that we've got lined up from the Philippines, and also how we plan to do the business matches. Sue Ann?
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Thank you. Morning, everyone. I'm Sue Ann from IDC, and I'm going to quickly introduce the 9 potential partners in the Philippines who has expressed interest to participate in this business matching with the GAIN companies. Okay, so quickly, the first one would be T1 Vision. T1 Vision is established in 2008 and is headquartered in Makati. They provide fully outsourced IT management for enterprises, SMEs, and SOHOs. So their service delivery model is designed to build an IT ecosystem for its customers, and its services include some managed services, system integration, as well as distribution. Their core offerings include unified communications, premise security, data network, as well as structured cabling. The next one would be First Data Corp. So First Data Corp has been in business since 1985, and they offer services such as software consulting and development, system integration and managed services that provides an end-to-end management for the entire business cycle. Their affiliates include InfoBuilder that provides document management system as well as enterprise content management. Another affiliate would be Commerce First that focuses on hardware, as well as Pisara Solutions that offers cloud-based school management systems. Next would be Mustard Seed Systems Corporation. They are established in 1999, and it's one of the one-stop business solution provider for SMEs in the Philippines. Their product portfolios include business management solutions, building security solutions, HR management, education technology solutions, as well as office space solutions such as furniture and design. So apart from having a few branches in the Philippines, they also have one international office in Hong Kong. Next would be MEC Networks Corporation. MEC is established in 1995, and they are a technology distributor in the Philippines with a base of more than 800 active partners right now. They provide support to different enterprises in infrastructure setup, security, expansion, as well as optimization. So their IT products would include IT surveillance solution, unified communications, wireless infrastructure, wired network, data storage, network security, as well as connectivity. MTech is a leading cybersecurity and network performance solution providers that's part of Multicam, which is a listed company in Singapore. So they're established in 2002 and now has operation in 17 cities, and one of them is the Philippines. So their product and solutions will cover cloud access security, data-centric security, as well as network system management and monitoring. They are also an authorized training center for Checkpoint and Symantec. AMTI. So Axon Microtechnologies Incorporation is a 100% Filipino-owned company that started off as a hardware provider. So now they've grown into an end-to-end ICT solution provider with over 600 employees across all key locations in the Philippines. AMTI has a customer base of 3,000 clients in the Philippines with a healthy mix from both the public and private sectors. So their technology solutions include managed services, advanced premise protection systems, healthcare solutions, business intelligence and analytics, as well as industrial automation. Shellsoft Technology Corporation. Shellsoft is founded in 1988 and they provide productivity, security, and data center solutions. Their expertise covers core infrastructure, security infrastructure, virtualization infrastructure, system management, cloud capabilities, as well as communication solutions. Shellsoft is a Microsoft awarded them the most awarded Philippine partner in the last decade, and they were recently named as one of the top 50 most promising Microsoft partners in Asia Pacific by the APAC CIO Outlook. And the last two potential business partners are probably brands that you're very familiar with, which are Fujitsu and NTT Data. So Fujitsu Philippines Incorporation is established in 1975, and the company has grown beyond its original mission of purely promoting, selling, and supporting Fujitsu branded hardware line. And it's now recast itself as a complete one-stop shop for ICT solutions and services. They currently have over 500 full-time employees in the Philippines. And the last would be NTT Data. NTT Data Philippines is one of the top 10 global business and IT service providers with presence across 50 countries. And Philippines is one of their global delivery center that specializes in delivery of business, learning, outsourcing solutions. So NTT Data Philippines is a certified gold partner for both Oracle and Microsoft. So in the past 2 months ago, we've started engaging organizations in the Philippines, and these are some of the organizations that has shown interest to participate in this business matching. But unfortunately, due to the current crisis, some of them, they are not available. Some of them, they can only make decision after the lockdown or the ECQ has been lifted. So therefore, this business matching can't be organized, can't be done this week. So IDC and MDEC will continue to reach out to them. We'll try to engage them since they've shown interest, and we'll try to arrange for maybe another session some other time to have a further discussion with some of the GAIN companies or for those who are here today. So back to you, Ryan. We'll keep you posted and updated on the progress. Yeah.
Or if I could just add, hi, it's Sudhif here. So as what Suen said, we have been engaging with these partners actually for the whole month. And prior to the ECQ, we actually had 5 of them confirmed for the physical event, which was supposed to occur at the end of March, prior to the announcement on March 16, for the lockdown on March 16. So there is interest, which is very positive for us. They are interested in meeting the GAIN companies. They do want to understand more about what you guys are doing and how they can integrate their business or how you can integrate with them. So we are going to continue to try to do this over the next 2 weeks to prep up and host out one-on-one business matching with some of these partners, with some of your organizations as well. And we're getting those dates firmed up. I think there's a bit of nerves over the extension of the ECQ, but ultimately with it going on so long, at least from our point of view, they still need to find a way to get back to business. So for us, we're going to keep tabs on that. And we do hope that over the next couple of weeks together with MDEC, we will be setting up meetings for you to run that on an online virtual platform as well, right?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Sudha. Thank you, Suan. So yeah, so we'll keep everyone updated about the scheduling and the logistics of how we want to manage this, yeah? So that will bring us to the end of our program today. So as I mentioned, just stay online first. We're gonna take a group photo, and I'm gonna get Hafiz and team to just quickly promote everyone and turn on the cameras for this, yeah? And so while we're at that, I would also like to thank once again our speakers, Ms. Azlina from Artrade Philippines, Sudev, Suan from IDC, and of course Gopi from MDEC. Yeah, and of course this wouldn't have been able to be done, you know, without the support of a team that I have backing me up today. That's Rafizal, Hafiz, Serena, Jocelyn, and Sham. You know, I know you can't see them now, but once we turn on the cameras and we can see everyone. So thank you everyone again for joining us. We apologize once more for the technical hiccups. We're trying to sort this out. And I'm confident that, moving forward, we'll get this sorted out and figured out, right?